I'll hold this at the beginning. Hello. Good evening. We are live. We got Braden here. It's springtime. Thanks for joining us. Whoever's here in the first Soergel's Garden Center live video. We're in our main production greenhouse number 1. And before we get started, I wanted to show our pansies right now because they look really nice. And the light right now looks really nice too. So we're going to start bringing these down pretty shortly. They're really nice up here in the greenhouse, especially in the evenings. But we're not here to talk about flowers tonight. We're here to talk about seed starting and kind of the basics amongst seed starting and what some tips and some tricks that we have here that will help you be successful in seed starting. The goal of this video is to be pretty short, not an hour like some of our other classes that we've offered. If you've ever been to one of our classes, but this will hopefully be 15, 20 minutes, something that you can even reference later on to help give you some information or something to look back on if you started and are like, hey, what did they say? You were able to go back and see some of the info that we give you tonight. So this will just be the first topic, and later on through the season, these live videos will be able to offer some more informative videos, maybe on pruning your shrubs or annual varieties that we really like. So we're excited to see how this goes. And if you have suggestions for videos or classes that we can offer, please let us know. So we'll get started. I'm here with my dad, Randy, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about some of the first things to do and what you need to get started with seed starting. So here's Randy.
Hi, guys. Well, one of the first things is that you can't be intimidated about this. You want to not be afraid to go ahead and start. You're not going to make mistakes, or you are going to make mistakes, but it's not going to be something that's going to be a catastrophe. But one of the things you want to do is, first of all, decide what you want to grow, okay? And where you're going to grow it. Are you going to grow it in pots or in containers or whatever? Because so many of the seeds and everything else, you actually will direct sow into your garden. You will not go ahead and start them in early and stuff. But the other ones like tomatoes and stuff and peppers, you may want to start them in early. And that's kind of one of the things that we want to talk about. I have here a bunch of the seeds that basically we've got, and all these seeds, right? Corn, the peas, beans, this other stuff is all pretty much stuff that you will put right directly into the garden. And then some of the other things, like some of the root crops, you would put these into the garden also directly at this time because they're not easily transplanted. But things like tomatoes and some of the marigolds and flowers and that's what we're going to be talking about, how to get those started. One of the most important thing is when you decide what you want with herbs, all of the containers or all of the packages have directions right on the back of them. So you've got reference points on all of our products that go ahead and get you started as to when you started them or whatever. One of the things as to when you start is we go backwards from the frost-free date, which is about May 20th. And we count back how many weeks it will tell you on the package that you need to start those seeds to get them started so that you have them in time. And I encourage you to go ahead when you're trying it for the first time, just to start some seeds, see how they grow, see how where they get too bit leggy or whatever, and then just keep doing a weekly sowing just so you learn.
I think if I can butt in, a lot of the seed packs that you find, and whether you get them online or with us here in the store, they have a lot more seeds in the packs than you can probably plant in your garden at home. So the cost of the seeds aren't that expensive. And so it's really worthwhile to even just get to some stuff to germinate for the cost of it, just to try, even if you end up giving it away or throwing it away, just to at least experience what those seeds germinate like.
One of the first things is going to be the soil. And we have right up here, a seed starting mixture is what you want to be using because it's got a lot of air space. The roots of your seedling's going to need air. And if I can show you on this tomato, you can see how much the roots are going around the soil particles. And that's because that's important that when the seed starts that you get that root development. And there's different things that you can use to put the containers would be the next thing.
We have a question.
Yes.
Can you use last year's leftover seeds again this year?
What we suggest, if you're going to be checking last year's seeds, or will they germinate or not? So if you can take and put some of the seeds, like 10 seeds, in a paper towel and dampen it and kind of keep it warm to see if they germinate, so that you know that the germination is still good. So a lot of times I suggest get fresh seeds if it's not an expense. Get fresh seeds, and that way you're sure that they're going to do it. But they still can try it, but sometimes they won't germinate quite as well.
I think a lot of the seeds, especially up here in the greenhouse, when we have seeds left over from the previous year, if we can, we would like to reuse them. But from our perspective, when we have crops that we're relying on, it's for the price of them, we start new one, or we buy new ones every year, and then just use fresh seed, because then you have a lot of packets will give you an estimated germination rate, and then it's going to be more true to that than if you stored them over the last winter.
And Cam will show when he's gonna plant some basil for you in just a little bit, and we're using some soil that we've got, but the seed starting soil is what's really you want to use. But some of the containers, you can use any kind of container, you know, to start what you want to, but you just got to make sure it's got drainage in the bottom, so that the water gets, you don't want them to get overwatered or waterlogged. And there's other things that you can use. They have these little pellets. If you look at this tray right here, there's a pellet right here, and then there's a tray with all of them in right there, you know, and these have the soil already in them, and we just drop them in the water, and this is what they turn out like. And they puff up, and you can put a seed right in there and then kind of squeeze it together and water it with that. Now, the thing that's neat about this kind of container is the roots will come through the container, and you actually plant this in the ground when it becomes time. Now, the other thing that you have to know about these containers, including this peat pot right here, the roots will come through. When you plant these in your garden, they must be below that the sun does not hit them. Because what will happen if the sun hits this, it'll wick the water right out of it, and it'll become real hard, and the plant will die. So this has got to be underground, either one of these that you're using. So that's kind of one of the things that is kind of important, but can use any kind of container. And what they come in this kind of a package like this with 12. And then we also have these for sale. What we use down there, if you want to start a bunch of the and just do rows of different things like that, you can be able to get these here at our place. Okay, so that's the containers, and then the soil that you're going to be using. The next thing that we're going to be making sure that you do is you have light. Okay, now you can use a shop light, or a grow light is actually better. And when you do that, if you're using that, you want to make sure that your light is very close to the plants, or the soil level. If it doesn't, then it's going to stretch. Now, you cannot use incandescent lights because that produces heat. So you want to use basically a fluorescent tube that's not going to create heat. And then the next thing you're going to be worried about is moisture. And moisture, you want to keep your seeds wet, but not soaking wet, because you need that airspace. And one of the things that on certain seeds, like if you're going to start some peas or something even in your garden, you can soak them in a cup of water also to get them to expand, so that they take in water and they'll start to grow a little bit faster. And then I also want to just mention the heat. You know, that's the hard part. Most people don't have a heating source, but if you can get a heat mat, if you want to do it right, you can get a heat mat and put a heat mat down, and the temperature is kind of critical to stay between 72 and 76 degrees for a lot of things. And then once again, the package is going to tell you a lot of the temperature stuff. If you don't have that, I'm telling you, still try some things, still experiment and see how it works for you. Putting it on your windowsill or something is going to go ahead and still get some heat through the day. And what I've done before, when I'm trying to get them to germinate before I need the light, I take and put them on a cookie sheet, and then where the heat vent comes out of the floor, I put books on both sides and put that cookie sheet up between those books, and then the heat coming from the vent kind of warms that tray up. So that's just a quick way of probably doing that. Okay.
So I just wanted to show you guys, in our greenhouse, at least, those three things that he mentioned, obviously we utilize all of those as well. And I'm standing right in front of our main seeding bench, and you can see a bunch of our seeds. that have come up in the last little bit. They are all sitting on a heat mat. They all have their water, which is this line right here hanging above the seeds. And then above that are our lights. So all three of those things really important. And on a commercial scale, at least, it's how we are able to manage the environment whenever we grow things here. So I'm going to do a little example just to show you what it's like to seed. I have a tray that I have already filled with soil. This is the organic mechanic soil that we sell here in the garden center. And this is a 72 cell tray. There are multiple different sizes like he talked about. For this example, we're going to use the 72 cell tray. And the first thing, if you were to look or feel the soil, which maybe you can see or feel, there we go. It's pretty dry. So I'm going to give it a little bit of water to get it started. There are attachments for hoses that will mist, or you can just use a hand spray bottle rather than a hose with a traditional like water breaker. That can sometimes be a little bit too much force and disrupt your soil or disrupt your seeds so that they fly into the other part of the flat or fly off of the flat completely. So these are nice because it's very gentle. You can slowly get the water into the cells. Okay. The next part is I'm going to go through and I'm actually just going to tamp or indent just a little cavity on the top of the cells here. This is just going to give the seeds a little resting place so that, again, when they get water, they don't move into another cell. You don't want to tamp too hard because you don't want the soil to lose its aeration, or you don't want it to get too compact. So just like a little bit of a tamp here. And then I want to seed some basil seeds. So it depends on what you're going to be seeding. Vegetables, for the most time, you're going to want to put one seed per cell. Not always the case, but for, I guess, a general rule, that's generally what you will do. But for herbs, like what I'm going to be doing right now, I usually do 5 or 6 basil seeds per cell. And when you think about a basil plant, it's nice to have kind of a thicker, more shoots coming out from the soil rather than just one single basil. So a lot of herbs, you will seed multiple 5, 10 seeds, depending. I might even do close to 10 seeds since these are a little bit larger of a cell. This basil is called Nufar. It is more powdery mildew resistant, and we sell it here. It's really good. It's kind of like a larger leaf, more Italian style basil. And I've put the seeds into this little contraption here, which is a very cheap little, I'm not actually going to open it, but it's a very cheap little device, and it's nice because it really helps kind of regulate how many seeds you put into each cell. The other little trick, if you don't have one of these, you really don't need it. A lot of times you can take a piece of paper, fold it in half, put some seeds in here, and then just slowly tap it, and then they'll kind of funnel out that way too. So all I'm going to do is go through, and I'm just going to, let's get the camera right there. Just give it a little tap. I'm not too concerned with exactly how many seeds fall in. I know that I want somewhere between 5 or 10. And then this way, every time my finger taps, probably like 3 or 4 fall out. Some seeds require light to germinate. In this instance, I'll be going back over and adding some vermiculite over top. You can also just add soil, but you don't want to bury them. You just want a little bit of coverage over the top so that they're exposed to water or a moist media, and that sometimes a little bit of light is still able to penetrate this light level or this light bit of soil, or like I said, I'm going to be using vermiculite, and that way you get better germination rates. For seeds that don't want to be covered, certain lettuces that need light to germinate, or even oregano that needs light to germinate, I would still maybe put just a super thin layer of soil or vermiculite over top, just so that those seeds are then exposed to some sort of moisture. Otherwise, they dry out really quickly, but you don't want to totally cover them. And so I've gone through and just given each cell some seeds, and there's still a bunch left in here, so I will save those for another session. So again, really like to use vermiculite. I have a giant bag up here. I will need to find a smaller bag. Do we have an open bag? Here's. So vermiculite is a little bit lighter than soil. And like I said, it allows a little bit more light to pass through. So I'm just going to go through. I'm using just a herb pot with some holes in the bottom and just kind of like dusting over top of these. And so they're really not buried very much. Okay, and now I'm going to add some extra water over top of them. Now this part, you want to do very slowly, because if you let all the pressure out of the hose, you will blow the seeds right out of the corner of the flat or onto the bench or wherever. So I always start whether you have a hose or, like I said, a sprayer, just very gently going over top. And you can see the color of the vermiculite change. It's a little bit darker once it gets wet, so you kind of know whenever it's gotten enough water. And then from here, I'm going to do one more very important thing, and that's labeling it. And this is probably maybe one of the most important things, because you always think that you will remember exactly where or what you seeded, and you won't. Time will go by. A lot of sprouts look very similar, and so you won't remember. So do yourself a favor and make sure you label everything, and keep good notes. So I'm going to put the date, March 19th, on this label as well. And that way, when they do sprout, I can take a note and say, hey, those took 5 days to sprout, so that you know when you want to sprout more or seed more. Just put it on there. I will show you an example. Here. One of our employees, Braden, seeds peppers, super hot peppers, extremely hot peppers. And this is a tray that he seeded, and you can see all the different types and how it is illustrated and partitioned just on the front of the flat there, so that you're able to remember which rows are what, because you may not want to seed 72 basils. We need to, but at home you might only want 5 basils. So making sure the flat is all illustrated and marked is going to be really helpful for you later on. So the flat is watered. It's just going to go onto the heat bench here. Most of our seeds are heated to about 70 degrees. Certain plants need warmer, certain plants need cooler. Basil, 70 degrees. I mean, that's kind of the sweet spot. 70 to 72 is a really good spot for a lot of seeds. And I'll show you actually one other kind of cool kit that we have here in the greenhouse is our germination chamber. So this is an old bakery rack that we kind of retrofitted, and we put lights in and a humidifier and a heater. And we have, right now we just have some chives in here, but we'll be seeding some more stuff. But this is a nice way because we can layer a ton of different seeds in here, keep them at the temperature that we want them to be. And then as soon as they crack or as soon as they start to sprout, they come out into the greenhouse where they're exposed to a little bit more light. If you are going to be growing vegetables, there are some rough dates for this region. We're in Pittsburgh, so some very rough dates of when you should start things. And these aren't like, you don't have to abide by this in totality, but generally, and I wrote them down just so that I can reference it. So cole crops are a lot of your brassicas or even like leafy greens, things that are really good in frost resistant to the cooler temperatures. March 1st is kind of a good time to seed a lot of those things. If you look up here on here, this is a lot of our brassicas and leafies that we seeded the beginning of March and then recently transplanted a couple days ago that will be ready maybe in another 10 to 14 days. Those flats, we have some left over, look like this. So generally speaking, you want to transplant once they have sprouted, once they start to get their first true leaves, because what a lot of people don't understand, when you see a sprout and it comes up, the first two leaves, they're not actually leaves, they're called cotyledons, and they are basically kind of part of the seed, and the real leaves will come out and push behind those. And I don't have an example to show you exactly, but whenever you start to see those first real leaves, so kind of like four leaves, if you were to say, that's a great time to then do your transplanting. And so some of these we had waited until that point, and then I wish I had a good example, but here we go. Okay. This is a brassica of some sort. This is a cabbage, Copenhagen market cabbage. These first two are not considered leaves, but this one right here, this is an actual leaf that the plant is going to use for photosynthesis. So once we saw these, we started transplanting them. So beginning of March for like cold brassicas, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kohlrabi, bok choy, that kind of stuff. I do have heat mats, but I'm not convinced they're doing much because of the tray I have my little seedling pots in. I have a space heater that I run randomly. Yeah, I mean, so seeds will germinate. Not always. They still can germinate if they're under temperature. It just may take a lot longer. If you can get them some heat, you'll probably see faster results. What's worse is to have seeds too hot. If you get into like 85, 90, 95 degrees for the seeds, you can cook them, and it's actually worse than if they are too cold. So the other thing, I don't have it up here, but there are little soil thermometers too that you can just put into the soil that will help show you where your soil is at, and then that can kind of help judge where if you need to be adding heat or taking heat away. So I'd recommend getting a soil thermometer and then kind of watching that as whether you add a heater or whichever. But the heat mat, generally speaking, the seeds will benefit from having some heat. So we talked about the cold crops. Peppers take a little bit longer to germinate, a little bit more finicky. So mid-March is kind of when, as you can see, when you talked about Braden's peppers, we started those kind of mid-March. That's a good time to start peppers for this region. And eggplants and tomatoes, April 1st to kind of mid-April. They come up pretty quickly and they grow very fast. And sometimes if you start seeds too early, which is often what a lot of people will do because it's very exciting and it's spring and you want to get things going, you'll start things too early. But tomatoes are one of those things that can get really too big too quick on you. And so kind of April 1st to mid-April is when we start all of our tomato starts that we sell down in the garden center. And for the reason of if they get too large for us up in the greenhouse, you're then trying to mitigate the size and them flopping over, or then you kind of run the risk of having more foliage for possible pests or something, which is a whole nother topic, but I don't want to freak you out because it's possible, not likely, but it is something to consider. So trying to get things to time whenever you want them to go out is really helpful. But again, when we talk about the cost of these seeds, start them every week, start a couple every week and keep notes. And then that way you throw stuff away or you give stuff away if it's too big. And then you've got another crop a week later that you're like, this is the perfect time for me to now put these in the garden. So next year you've got your notebook and you can say, hey, I started those on April 7th last year. That was perfect. I'm starting them then. Or, hey, you know what? Those are way too big. Let's try April 15th. So that's a really good way, is just to have multiple crops so that you're able to help learn and educate yourself, because every situation is different. Every environment's different. The seeds are not all going to start the same exact time every year for you. So it's worth kind of starting multiple crops. Zucchinis, cucumbers, squash, melons, things like that. Those are May 1st. Corn, those kind of things, you would start in May. And actually, when I say that, certain like corn, a lot of peas, beans, those things you really don't want to start in a little pot. You want to put those, just direct sow them into your garden. They come up so fast. And honestly, they kind of go through a little bit of shock if you are to put them in a little pot and then put them in the garden. They kind of don't like it so much. So you kind of will get better results if they just get direct sowed in your garden, and then they'll sprout from there, and you just keep them watered. And that's kind of the best plan for certain crops. No, don't be afraid to ask questions. Try to start those alongside. Sorry, I tried to start the ones alongside maturity dates on the packets. They should. You can have things outside. It's just, so there's the topic then of hardening off seeds as well, and it's worth. I can touch briefly on some good tactics for doing that, and you can even delve a little bit deeper on the internet to learn some different techniques for hardening things off. Yes, your plants will still grow. What happens is when they're in this warm environment in the greenhouse here, and then you just put them outside, they're so used to this warm temperature in here. And if you get a cool night, or you get too cold of a night, the plants can kind of suffer a little bit. So you kind of need to harden them off or toughen them up, kind of similar to us. Whenever it's in the middle of summer and you get a cold night, you're more susceptible to feeling like it's really cold. But once you're exposed to the cold a little bit more often, a little more seasoned, a little bit more able to withstand the cold temperatures. So a lot of people will actually take their plants outside during the day, expose them to the weather changes, the wind, which is really helpful for seedlings as well, bring them back inside in the evening, and then kind of like keep shuttling them back and forth throughout the course of a couple weeks until they end up finally going outside. Oh yeah, that's fine. No, you will be, like I said, keep notes for what you're doing. And if you've noticed that they're too big, then just try to give them as much space as possible. And then next year, you'll know that maybe you should start them later. If you have some more seeds, you can still start them now. So yeah, the process should be fun. And I think there's a lot of reward in starting seeds yourself, especially then growing the plants. And then when you get to harvest them yourself too, it's very fulfilling, because you know exactly all the inputs and all the effort and everything that went into those seeds, especially if you're into organic practices. I'm a big proponent of organic gardening. So all of our edibles, our herbs, our veggie starts, I grow them organically. We don't spray them. We use beneficial microbes and fungus and a lot of natural products and fertilizers to help keep these things and these plants as healthy as possible without using synthetic additives. So I think that gives our customers the best chance for success whenever they go home, especially if they want to continue on with organic gardening practices. The fact that their foundation is organic really helps if that's the direction that you want to take. Not everybody cares about organic. That's fine. To me, it's important, especially with the food that I want to grow and eat and provide for our customers and for myself and for my family. So I like organics. And if you have questions about organics, you can feel free to stop in and talk to me. Or we have very knowledgeable staff too that could maybe help you as well. What raised bed garden soil do you recommend? Coast of Maine last year. So the Coast of Maine, we carry almost exclusively Coast of Maine products. And that is because we love them. And all of our production mixes that we grow everything in are all from Coast of Maine. So our annuals, with the exception of some, with our seed starting, we use the Organic Mechanics and the Coast of Maine. We're trialing to see what kind of differences we see with those mixes. But the raised bed mix is great because there's a lot of nitrogen and there's a lot of calcium in there as well. And that is really beneficial for a lot of things. Like tomatoes really benefit from a lot of calcium. So the raised bed mix is going to have that lobster compost and that crustacean meal and that things and those other things in it, with the chitin and the lobster that will help supplement the plants with calcium to help prohibit things like blossom end rot and other kind of hurdles that you kind of encounter with a lot of vegetables grown in raised beds. So the raised bed mix, I would continue on with that, especially with what you have success with. And a lot of people are very tried and true with the products that they've used in the past. They like to use again because they know it works for them. If you're going to try a new product, which I love trying new things all the time, like I said, a side-by-side comparison. I mean, it's very fun to experiment. So it's a great way to kind of see what works best. And then that way you can make educated decisions on what to use in the future. So the coast of Maine also has some organic compost, like a cow compost and a lobster compost, that you can put over top of your soils too. And there are other amendments that we sell down in the garden center here. Some Espoma, some build-a-soil amendments that offer different types of nutrient profiles that will help give your garden and whatever you're growing the nutrients that it would need. So as far as the seed starting, we have one more. We got another question. If you start your tomato seeds in a greenhouse April 1st, do you need to use mats? Do you mean heat mats? Because if you do mean heat mats, then the answer is yes, because April, you still get cool nights. And while the greenhouse, we don't run at the temperature, we don't run the greenhouse at 70 degrees. We run it at 55 or 60. And there's a few reasons for that. But overall, that's the temperature that we run our greenhouses with for production. So we need a little bit more heat on top of that. So the heat mats are a great way to supplement that just a little bit to help keep that soil temperature a little bit higher. Yes, absolutely. Yes, if you've got compost at your house, you can use it by all means. Don't be afraid to use things around your house and recycle and repurpose things. Don't be afraid to buy expensive soil. The thing is, with the soil, it's all been tested very rigorously, so you know exactly what you're going to get. And if you do need calcium, or if you do need certain nutrients into your bed, that's when you're going to benefit from getting kind of the best mix, because it's going to have the aeration, it's going to have the nutrients, it's going to have everything that you're looking for. Whereas if you do use a compost around your house, which could be great, it could be lacking in a certain nutrient that you wouldn't know, maybe unless you got your soil tested. And that's another topic. I'll just say very quickly, it's always great to get your soil tested, especially if you're going to be using things. We offer a Penn State soil test kit that will help kind of identify what your strengths and weaknesses are in your soil profile. So I think that if you have any other questions, feel free to email us. My email is cameron@soergels.com. Absolutely email me. We have a great staff here. Feel free to stop in, ask us questions. I think we want to keep this video short. Like I said, we'll have other topics coming up, and I want it to be something that people can use to reference in the future. So I really appreciate everybody tuning in. And actually, I have one more thing to say is a little bit of an advertisement, but I guess if you could subscribe to us, it would be very helpful. We've shot this tonight on a computer. Until we get 50 subscribers, we can't use a cell phone or a smaller piece of kit to help film our videos. So if you were to subscribe, it'd be a huge help, so that Kevin standing here isn't holding a giant laptop and trying to wiggle around the greenhouse with us. So it would be very helpful if you could like and subscribe. I know you hear that probably on all sorts of YouTube videos. I never thought I'd say it, but hey, this could be a cool YouTube thing for us. And I think that we're all excited to see how this takes off and what kind of education we can provide the community, because we're learning alongside of a lot of people. And if you ask us a question, or if there's something that we don't know, we are able, and we have a network of professionals and people that we can reach out to help get you the information that you need to be successful. Because ultimately, we want everyone to be successful, because this is gardening. This is supposed to be fun. This is not supposed to be stressful. You're supposed to be enjoying yourself outside, and there's no need to be not having fun. So smash that like button. Thank you, Brayden. Maybe you could tell us which tomato seeds you carry and which you would recommend. When it comes to the seed, we carry a large selection of seeds. We carry the traditional hybrids and the heirlooms as well. I don't have the list right on top of my head. Like I said, you can email me or you can stop in to have a look at our selection. We carry all non-GMO seeds. A lot of them are organic. Renee's Garden seeds, Lake Valley seeds, Botanical Interest, and a new line called Peppers of the World. We have a really good selection, and we try to carry things that are a little bit unique and different so that you don't just see the same things that you're seeing everywhere. You know, we're a small family-run garden center, so I like to think that we should be able to offer some unique things that you don't see in the big box stores. And the big thing with us is if you shop with us and you purchase from us, we are here at your disposal to help you answer your questions or whatever you might need moving forward. So the pricing, I won't get over the pricing at the moment, but if you'd like to email me, Cameron@soergels.com, I can go over the pricing for the different types of soils that we have, no problem, or anything else. And I think that, thank you for telling everybody about the class. Stay tuned. If you join our Instagram, you'll see more Soergel's Garden Center. You'll see more I guess, advertisements or images of when the next classes will be. And I'd like to hear about some class ideas so that you're able to sit in the comfort of your own home and you're able to learn about these things. And it's hopefully easy enough, short enough that everybody can join and enjoy. So thank you very much. Have a great night, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Thanks.